everyone, I'm doing the intro separate today. I'm thrilled to be joined by Kelly Thompson, who many of you may know from many a comic outing. From her time at Marvel on Captain Marvel, Mr. and Mrs. X, Black Widow, co-creating Jeff the Landshark, just to list a few things. And of course, what we're going to be talking about today, Absolute Wonder Woman and more. I'm Cliff Noting, but if you're intrigued, please stay tuned for this fascinating and candid discussion. We're going to chat all things comics. Hi, everyone. As always, you can see we're doing something a little different today. I'm thrilled to be joined by Kelly Thompson. We're going to talk Absolute Wonder Woman and wherever our whims take us. And firstly, I want to thank you so much for taking some time to come and chat about everything.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. We talked a little bit offline that I really liked. I saw your YouTube video talking about the first issue, and I really, really enjoyed it. And so I was delighted to come on. Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun keeping up with your book, the Absolute universe in general. And I really can't believe that we're already a year in to so much. I mean, I'm sure you're even further in because you're plotting ahead and all of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finishing right now. I'm finishing the plotting stuff for 16 through basically 22, so 15 is the Batman issue. And then 16 starts off the Season of the Witch arc, which is like a 5-issue arc. But then I'm also plotting the 2 issues that Hayden will be away. That because that's sort of what we're doing with the Batman issue. Messed with it a little bit, but it's Batman. He messes with everything a little bit. We all welcome it. But it's sort of been like a 5-2 structure as far as Hayden, and then an alternate artist thing, and that's worked out really well for us. In part because we've been able to get just absolutely incredible artists to sub in. Like, it's pretty hard to replace Hayden, so you got to swing pretty hard to get some people who can really deliver for those 2 months that Hayden's away. So it's been really fun. But yeah, it feels crazy that it's been a year, but also you're right. I mean, I'm currently planning almost into the second year, like heading into the third. So the more you can plan ahead with this stuff, the better you are. It's something I struggle with a little bit. I think just decision wise, I sometimes don't want to commit. I want to think about it some more and think about it some more. And sometimes that changes things, and sometimes it just delays me. So it's a little bit of a tricky area there.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask. Now that you're so into it, has the trajectory gone as you envisioned, or after seeing some of the reception and the like, have you kind of, altered some of the ways you were going?
It's sort of a mix. I like to keep it a little loose because I want to be able to pivot if something's happening, and that worked really well for us in arc 1. I'll explain in a minute, but it does feel a little bit like dancing on a razor's edge to do it that way. So I don't like to do that too much. And I do think that doing something like this and doing something as big as this, you have to have a lot of world building thought and a lot of crazy ideas and a lot of wild ideas for where you might go and where these things could domino effect into other things. But an example of how staying a little bit loose with things has helped us is that, for the first arc, the first issue was planned out like for a long time. I very much knew I wasn't sure I could pull off what I was trying to do. I think we mostly did, but like the script was very tricky in how it sort of built to her saying that word Amazon, and it's a very non-traditional first issue in that there's like 2 named characters that people know and things like that, because I just really thought like it's more important for us to understand who this Diana is and where she came from and like what she's trying to do, and I want to put that like before everything else. And then we knew through 3 was plotted really tightly, but I wasn't really sure in 4 entirely what she was going to do. I knew it was going to be big superhero feats and also probably some big magical feats. There's an alternate reality where issue 4 is all silent, because that would have been really cool because she made the city deaf, but I just honestly couldn't figure out how to do it. There's just too much information you have to get across. I don't even know that DC would have gone for it, quite honestly. I mean, you can't have a mostly silent issue on number 4 of a big like launch like that. I think it just would have been too risky. It would have been very cool if we could have pulled it off, but I didn't have the chops, man. 4 and 5 were pretty loose about how the solve was going to come about. And I had the idea at some point with Diana's big ass sword that why couldn't, it's a magical object made by gods, like why can't she use her magic on it to make it huge? And once I had that thought, I was like, okay, well, we got to do that. And then Hayden, you know, they're such an incredible talent. They made that scene so incredible that I was like, I don't think what we were thinking of doing for 5 will work now, because it will just not that was their fault, but like that it would feel underwhelming because we'd gone so big with that visual. And at first I was sort of panicking because, you know, that feels like a mistake. And then I was like, why is it a mistake? We'll just go even bigger and better and more creative ideas. And like, that's the way to really get eyes on this book anyway. And so I pitched Hayden sort of 2 very specific things, one of which was the one we did. And once I wrote it down to Hayden as like, I think this is what it is, I was like, that's spectacular. And I don't know, you know, her transforming into Medusa in order to solve this problem, her using the lasso that she's afraid of on herself and everything that means. And then also immediately giving Steve a way to prove her so true when she says that thing about one good man can save the world, and that's why she sent him back to the world. Like, I recognize this is a good man, this is a hero, and if I send him back, he will do good things, and it's worth it. For that to almost immediately pay off for her, I thought was a really great way to show that she's on the right path. You know what I mean? Like, for him to be able to bring her back from the brink because she brought him back from the brink. I mean, I love the themes,
the symmetry,
symmetry and the cyclicality of that. So I just felt like it was exactly what it was supposed to be. And it was that sort of creator moment where it's like, you know, almost like a chorus singing where you can hear that, like it just sort of locked in together, which doesn't always happen. I mean, even best intentions and everyone doing their best, it can't always come together as magically as that. So that's a great example of how keeping loose can benefit you. Like, I think it made our first arc much stronger than if I had just stuck to exactly the things that I had planned out, you know, 6 months before we got to that point. I think the maze arc was more tightly planned, but I did end up making tweaks to that when we brought in, when I realized that the Poseidon's trident should be this sentient water, it meant we needed a lot more real estate for the cool shit we were going to do with that, and also the reveal of that. And so, like, that ended up truncating some development I hope to do with Steve and Etta and Barbara and Gia back at the home, at the Hyron, you know. So, but you got to just roll with these things and like make the best call. It's comics, so the part of the job is figuring out how to do it with as few panels as you can, you know? So just, there's not that much real estate.
Like, Diana is a kind of complicated character, I feel, for some to grasp, because so much of her work and her history involves balance. There's just so many, at times, seemingly disparate elements that are being brought together in her. And with this version, you kind of had a chance to choose what those were. So when you were looking at Diana and Wonder Woman and the history that's all there and all the different things that Wonder Woman can mean, how did you decide which ones you wanted to focus on?
I think you're right that it's a great moment. I would say that once you have a good idea that you know is solid, doing this kind of book where it's all open land is, but not only open land, but open land where you are both allowed to and expected to draw from other great shit that other people have done elsewhere and bring that in. So you have all this rich material you can draw from, but you can pick and choose the best way to bring it in to make the cohesive story. It just gives you a leg up on everyone who's come before, because, you know, they've often been operating in like complicated, messy continuity where they can only do certain things, and we're not hampered by that. So while it's a great time, I also think the stakes are very high because, like, you know, if you fuck that up, what's your excuse, right? So we put a lot of thought into it. I think one of the things that ended up helping me, it could have been a thing that was a problem, but it ended up being a help, I think, which is that I am very into Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
I really love it. I've loved it since I was a kid. I'm no expert, I'm no historian,
Mm-hmm.
but I just know a lot about it because it's always
Mm-hmm.
been interesting to me. And yet, in a lot of Wonder Woman stories, even as someone who loves mythology, I often felt overwhelmed by it or frustrated by it, or I didn't like the creativity felt like it was a little not dialed all the way up in a way that I want it to be. And I realized I just couldn't stop thinking about how hard it must be for people who weren't into mythology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it did allow me a look at how do we do this where we can really highlight cool shit that will excite people without them feeling overwhelmed and like, oh, well, I don't know anything about all that stuff, and so I'm going to check out. So I really tried to make it sort of simple, clean through lines. And sometimes that frustrates people who love mythology because mythology, like comics, is super complicated and crazy, and things contradict each other, and there's all these different tellings. But there's also this idea that history is written by the winners, right? And I think mythology is its own kind of history. We call it mythology, but a lot of it is history. So I think it's like a tricky thing that it could have been a disaster for us because of how nerdy I am for all these things. But instead it ended up being like, all right, let's find a way to make it accessible for more people. Because again, even for me in a Diana book, sometimes I was like, what is this? Who is this guy? I can't even say that name. Like, you know, so I just didn't want it to be a stumbling block for people to finding Diana. I wanted it to like only be an asset. But we also did a dangerous thing in that, you know, all her stuff is already very complicated, like any character that's been around for this many decades.
Yeah.
But then we were like, oh, let's add a bunch of magic to it, which could have really overcomplicated things. But again, I think it sort of ended up honing it into like a more clear idea of what she was about and what she was trying to do and the things that mattered to her. I mean, our Diana prays more than, especially when we get to the annual, you'll see like an intercutting prayer thing that I think is really cool. I mean, I've never seen Diana pray so much as in our book, and it's because that's how her magic works. Sacrifice, you know, literal sacrifice of blood and all these things, prayers to gods. I mean, you know, so she's got to be devout in a strange, weird way that I think is really fun and interesting, but it could have been a mess, you know? I think without the right creative team, maybe it is a mess, but I had a lot of really smart, creative, awesome people helping us figure it out and hammer it into one shape that made sense, you know?
I think it helps make her feel distinct that she has that magic element added onto her, because I think it helps because people going into this know that it is an alternate universe. Having those aspects that make it feel more different, I think in an avenue like this can be a strength. And now that you're in so far, do you feel a bit more comfortable to explore a bit more of some of those myths? Like, for example, one of the ones you bring in very early is Medusa, and that is one that has not only evolved into having very significant meanings for certain people, but also has its own contentious history because of how it's been written and overwritten so many times.
Right. Which is something we get into directly in the annual. The annual is very much about Diana's experience briefly being Medusa and how horrifying it was to her and how it's true injustice for her and like she can't like look away from it. And it's not a retelling in any way of the Medusa myth. I'm not interested in that. I was just saying in another interview that I think the problem that some people who are super into mythology, the same way I am, have with this, and certainly I'm sure historians particularly have trouble with it because we're not telling myths. We're telling a very specific DC version of how it applies to that world.
Yeah.
And then there's another step removed because this isn't the DC world. This is a dark side DC world, right? Where it's been messed with even further. And the other thing I need people to remember is that it's not a story about Medusa. It's a story about Diana.
Yeah, Diana.
That's what we're here for. So all of the mythology, for good or ill, is going to be through that sieve, you know?
And to bolster her and her story.
Yeah, or for her to bring light to these kind of thematic things that I think everyone will respond to. But it's one of the reasons I saw there was a lot of criticism. Even while people were so excited, there were people who know a lot about mythology. People who don't know a lot about mythology may not know, but the Medusa myth, as you said, it's very contentious. There are takes that are wildly different and that have very different meanings. And that's why we had literally on the page when Barbara's sort of describing it, what's happening.
Yes, he says, or maybe it didn't.
Yeah, she's like, but there's a lot of different texts and they all contradict. And so, we can't say. And so I put that out there, not only to soothe people who would maybe be upset about, holy shit, that's the wrong myth, she didn't do her research, but also to suggest this, to lay these clues for, hey, this isn't the world you know, and we're going to excavate some of this stuff. Don't think we're not just going to say something and then never deal with it. So I don't know. I don't know that people who read that story, if they read the annual, if that will make them feel better about how mythology is being integrated. But yeah, I mean, if you're expecting the quote unquote real true mythology to show up in a DC comic book about Wonder Woman, I don't think you're going to be satisfied. If you are interested in excavating and exploring creatively some of those themes and ideas and how they touch upon another fictional character in a fictional way, then maybe you're going to have a better time, I guess, is what I would say. But it does pain me if people who love mythology are upset, because I am you people. So I don't want people to be upset, but I also don't see a way for me, DC comic book writer, freelancer, to come in and go, this is the true mythology. I'm not a historian. I didn't spend years, researching mythology or going on digs in Greece. I'm just some idiot at home, loving stories and trying to create some interesting, thematic parallels with stuff.
What theme underneath has been the one that you found the most challenging to work with? Because there's a lot going on here. There's a bunch of things about, sacrifice and agency and having at times to balance some very strong core emotions and kind of push them down. So what are some of the things that have been more difficult to work with?
I don't know that I'd say it's more difficult, but I think thematically, one of the things we're laying a lot of clues for, or I don't know if they're clues, but that we're laying the groundwork for, is one of the things I think is most important, because it begins and ends with Diana, which is that Diana has been removed. She's had the words of her people and her heritage removed from her. She may never get to meet any more than Io. I don't know how long we'll go and where that'll take us, but she's not going to be stepping foot on Paradise Island anytime soon. They might be in paradise, but it's a prison, and that's not something she's going to be allowed access to unless she topples all the structures that are in her way, and that is a long way off. But I think, from that very first issue, when we're literally censoring Circe on the page, I think if you look around, you'll see a lot of silenced women as thematic, from a siren that can't speak to what's happened to Diana and Circe. I mean, Circe has been silenced by Hecate even, for the greater good, but hey, I'm going to take you and put you in hell so that you're here to raise a kid that you did not ask for. These are dark themes about what's happening to people. In Circe's case, it's something she comes to embrace and feel powerful about. And it's done with the intention of quote unquote greater good and some great plan of the goddesses, but she didn't have agency in that, and that is fucked up. The Medusa story has themes of agency and silencing. Obviously, we saw Zatanna, and the first time we saw her, she's muzzled.
Yes.
So these are not subtle ideas we're laying down, but I hope we're laying them down in a way that can build up for people into something powerful. I think what I would love is for the series as a whole whenever we finish, or maybe from arc to arc, I don't know. It's hard to think of how long it might go or how short it might go. I don't know. But that first issue, the way it builds toward Diana saying that word, I would love it if in the end the whole series feels like that, where it's a build to an explosion of truth and justice and understanding and all of that. So, but this is a very dark world, so I don't know that we get there. We'll have to see.
I think it definitely does evoke a lot of feelings. Like we were talking a bit beforehand, but it's very interesting to see that kind of perspective of someone, forced into motherhood and forced into having those kind of sacrifice decisions and that kind of agency removed from a perspective of, say, someone who goes into it willingly. So I do think that there's a lot to explore in there. And how have you found the reception to it overall? Like, do you find people are engaging with it on that level? Do you find that there is a kind of mix, that kind of thing?
I think it's a mix. Like, you'll see someone, I mean, I just saw a post the other day, someone responding to a trans person responding to the power of the first issue, and like her coming to that word Amazon, and how for them that was like a revelation. And I think that's for a lot of us, whether it's something trans or LGBT or whatever else you've got going on, whether it's just that you realize you don't fit in where you are and you have to find some other community. The thing that was wildest about seeing the post that this person made was that a lot of people in the comments to it had gotten there, and they were like, yes, I totally agree. And other people were like, oh my God, I didn't see it that way. Look at that. Oh my gosh. And then they're like, I'm going to reread it. And like, so, I mean, that's like the greatest thing you can ever hear, is that people are discovering new things on further watches or further reads. It's something I've been experiencing a lot lately with rewatching usually TV shows more than movies. It'd be a lot more convenient if it was movies, because that'd be quicker. But, I've talked a lot about with people that probably one of my favorite television shows of all time is a show called The Expanse, which is a sci-fi show. It's incredible. And it's based on books, which I have not read. I should tell everyone out there. So when I talk about The Expanse, I'm talking about the show, not the books. And one of the things that has sort of both blown me away as a viewer and also terrified me as a writer is that on subsequent watches of the whole thing, so it takes a while to go through a whole 6 seasons, even if it's short seasons, to go through 6 seasons of television multiple times, but I have found so many more things in it on subsequent watches that I completely missed. And sometimes they're pointless little fun things that don't matter. But sometimes I feel like they're really big building blocks about what the show's about and all these like beautiful little turns within the show. And I think as a creator, it's really beautiful to realize that people can have that experience, but it's also really hard to realize that unless you're super obvious with it, most people aren't going to go back and reread a thing a million times to be like, let me find all the layers. And so it is sad to think that you put these layers in there and a lot of people aren't getting it because they're just reading a comic book. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not, there's no judgment there. I'm happy for people to just read it on the surface level and be like, she's incredibly cool. She's badass. She's also nice. I'm into it. Like, that is completely fine to connect to it on that level. But seeing what happened to me with The Expanse made me realize, gosh, I'm desperate for people to all like find that within my work too. And it's, you're like, so am I being too subtle? You're like, if I'm less subtle, then it's really not layered in there the way I want it to be. But also maybe a lot of people are never going to know it was there because they're reading it on a less intense level, So it's a tricky thing. I'm very proud of the book, and I feel like it's hitting where people need it to, between like the cool reveals and the big moments and all the incredible design and this incredible panel layout stuff that Hayden is doing, which feels like it's just like changing comics. It's incredible. I'm glad people are finding it on whatever level they need to find it and like able to connect to it in a way that works for them. I think that's I think I've never worked on a project before where I felt like that was really happening, like across the board, and where like word of mouth, like the people are telling people about it, and a lot of people who are telling someone about it, they all have different things that they're saying about it. I mean, some people are just talking about the costume, and some people are talking about Circe, and some people are talking about the underworld, and I just, it's cool that people are connecting on it in different ways.
It feels like there's a lot of just energy in general right now inside
Yeah.
like the fandom and discussion space, and that's really exciting to see. And I think that there will be more people who end up coming back to it because that word of mouth is kind of building. And so because with comics you have of course the floppies and then the trades, and like there's opportunities
Yeah.
to kind of dive back and take another look at it. And I mean, it sounds like you're being very intentional with it. So is there anything that you're really excited to draw in that you haven't as of yet?
I am being very intentional about it. I like that word. I'm going to be using that more because I do think that is what I'm trying to do. I mean, you know, the readers will decide how successful or not I am at that, but it is very intentional in the way I'm approaching it. I think it's harder to talk about things that I maybe haven't hit yet because maybe they are more spoilery territory. But I would say there's a lot of very obvious parallels. By horrible coincidence, we ended up with a darker, dark side world that is a fair mirror to some things that are happening in the real world, which makes it sort of easier. Maybe it makes it a little more dangerous, I guess, but it makes it easier to point people to some of this stuff. There's a line in this month's issue 14 where Etta is talking about how fucked up the world is, and it's partly, you know, it's a little bit an Easter egg because she sort of vaguely references other books and people will recognize like the things she says about those books. And it's also just about what we're all really experiencing, and you know that you can't like put your boot on the neck of the people and just like expect that to last. It makes me think of, I don't know if you watched Andor, but there's a big speech in that about how freedom spreads because it's a natural idea, and that fascism, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, these things you have to have complete control because it's unnatural. It's unnatural to force people to be this way, and that's why you always find cracks in it and why it's hard to hold on to that because it's not a natural thing. The way it is to just want to be free and to want to live, and those things come organically to us. So I think that there's a lot of that kind of stuff but bubbling up in, and I would say not just Absolute Wonder Woman, I would say Absolute Superman is much more politically, like nakedly political in a great way. Like, I mean, I have to say that was the most exciting and emotionally invested I've ever been in Krypton stuff in Jason's Absolute Superman. It felt really powerful to see again those sort of reflections of mirroring our own sort of world and our own sort of problems we've got. So I think everyone's doing this in different ways in these Absolute books, and feeling like it's ratcheting up in the world only makes the books more powerful. I'd rather just have them be less powerful, quite frankly. but here we are.
Art always ends up having that kind of reflective circular element to it where it's reflecting, influencing, and then other people are coming to it for the various reasons they could be, which is that because people engage with it in different ways. Some people are looking for escapism, some people are looking for a deeper read, and then some people are finding those kind of meanings either on purpose or accidentally as they go through. And that's part of what makes these type of stories so powerful, and part of why these characters I think have endured for so long, and potentially why some people view them as so mythic in that way.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I completely think that's on, and I do think that we've hit this a lot, so maybe I don't need to hit it again, but I do think there's something really beautiful in all art, but let's keep it to comics since we're here, that you can engage with it on whatever level works for you. You know, you can be rereading and doing deep dives. There's a guy who's a a philosophy guy who knows more about philosophy probably in his one finger than I will ever know in my whole life. And like, he's been doing these deep dives into the philosophy of some of these characters, and it's fascinating. And like, he's coming to conclusions that I completely agree with. Like, yes, that is how I designed Diana or whatever, right? But I didn't know this obscure branch of philosophy was what I was
drawing from.
I didn't know that. I'm just like trying to build her in the way that makes sense. And so to see someone analyze it that way and see that it holds up and that it makes sense and that it works and it's interesting, I mean, that's fucking great. That someone can read one comic and be like, oh my God, it's the greatest comic ever. She punched this guy so hard. Her sword got as tall as a building and she split this thing in half and I saw the insides of it. And then someone else is like, the moral relativism is, and I just think that's a beautiful thing. Like, we can all get it, what we want from it. And I love that.
How is it engaging with those kind of critiques of your work? Is it something that you do often, or just something that you do when you feel like you need to kind of see if it's hitting, or like?
I should do less of it for every reason, but the number one reason would just be it's the time consuming and I'm very busy and I need to be focused. So for that reason, I should do less of it. It's also not good to have too much of your own shit in your brain, but I know a lot of creators don't engage with this stuff at all, and that doesn't work for me either. I learn stuff from listening to people who are loving it or hating it. I learn a lot from listening to the guy who does a deep dive on the philosophies of the book, and I learn a lot from listening to the guy go, all I care about is her with the giant sword. Like, I think there's things to be gleaned from all of that. I think my ability to weaponize them into a better book is a question, because that comes down to me figuring it out. But I do think there's value in it. I should do less, though. I could still be getting a lot of benefit from it, and with doing less, it would be better.
Like, you mentioned not being too up inside of your own work, which I entirely relate to. Does having multiple projects on the go kind of help with that, or do you sometimes need to take a complete step back?
It all feels like my own bullshit. So it's hard. I just think, the truth of the matter is, the funny thing is, there's a weird catch-22 in comics where, in my view, one of the reasons comics is one of the nobler professions is because almost nobody gets into it to make money. I mean, I'm not saying people don't make money. There are people who've made a ton of money in this industry, and I very much enjoy having a well-paying job that I love. It's been great. So I'm not trying to denigrate that at all, but because nobody's in it trying to make money, it means they're trying to make art. They're trying to do something really beautiful. And at the same time that that's true, it's true that I have to write too many books, an unreasonable amount of books at the rates that I make. And so I can't really take my foot off the gas as much as I'd like. And I do think that hurts the work. I think it burns you out. I mean, they talk about the churn. I haven't heard it at DC, maybe because I haven't been that long, but I definitely heard at Marvel that you get in the churn and it's like just hard to get out. But like any creator, I mean, even a reclusive one such as myself, like, you have to be ingesting other stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to have anything to say. You need to be reading other things and watching great films and probably going outside sometimes. I'm trying to work on that one. Like, you have to bring other things into your world, or it all just becomes, a circular place where there's no exploration, right?
It can kind of end up cannibalizing itself, because then all the references become it becomes insular in a way.
Why do you have all the best words? I'm such a writer. You've said insular, you've said cannibalizing, you said intentional, all these things. I am on board with all of those. Yes. Let's blame it just for a minute. Let's let everyone know I'm on almost no sleep. So that's why. That's why I can't even find the right words today, guys. I'm sorry. The cannibalizing, that's really, honestly, that is so much it. It does start to feel that way, for sure.
So were you happy then to be stepping back from Birds of Prey and finishing that off to have a bit more space, or?
can't say I'm happy. I love that book. I loved writing that book. I confess that it was hard after Leo left and Ben Abernathy, my editor, left after that first arc. It was hard. It was hard to pivot to something else and still feel like it was the same thing that I thought we were going to be doing. And I love the book. I think the book does a lot of really great, fun things. It has terrific art. It features female characters just being friends and helping each other. And I'm into all these things, and I think they're valuable. But it was hard to write that and write Absolute Wonder Woman at the same time. And one is just taking off like a rocket, and the other one is people are buying it. People are enjoying it. I got a lot of lovely praise about it, but I also had people who were just bitching nonstop, and like it didn't have the sales to be like, great, we can just build whatever we want to build. I felt like after that first arc, I was constantly chasing something that I never caught, and it's frustrating to me. That said, if Absolute Wonder Woman hadn't happened at the same time, would I feel that way about the book? I maybe not, because that's one of my longest runs I've gotten to do. I mean, I think it's 28 issues is second only to the Captain Marvel run I did. So it was a great way to like spread out, and Barda and Cass, oh my God, I love them so much. And I do think there are things from the book that will stand the test of time. I also think, like that friendship, I also think that the book will, I hope it will age well among the other Birds of Prey books. I feel like when people get to that part of their Birds of Prey reading, they'll be happy and they'll have a really good time. Will it be the deepest dive they've ever been on? No, but it will be fun superhero adventures of women helping each other, you know? But it's because I always felt like I was chasing something I never sort of caught, except for maybe in that first arc. There is some relief, even though there's a lot of sadness. And I mean, I already miss those characters. We just finished the final pages today, actually. In colors. I'll probably do one more proofing pass and then we're wrapped, and I already miss them. The last panel is Black Canary, and it's one of my favorite panels of the whole run, and it's bittersweet. But I do hope that, you know, especially since I felt like I failed on so many levels with it, of chasing this car that I never caught, I hope that freeing up that space does free up some real estate for me to make sure that everything is getting the attention it deserves. Because it's sometimes when you are doing too many books that does happen.
I was going to ask, like, are you filling that space with something else? Like, are you hopping onto like some secret next level thing, or do you get the chance to breathe a bit?
Well, I mean, no, I'm not getting the chance to breathe. I mean, I'm doing this Buffy and Angel stuff that will start releasing in 2026.
Yes, at Dynamite,
yeah, a Buffy book and an Angel book, and they're basically, for the first arc, they're written as one big story, so it's all in tandem, so it's very tightly controlled, and because of that, there are really tight, tough turnaround deadlines that I have so far been not really meeting, and we've had an extended, a very long development time. But like, I mean, I wrote a Bible for this thing that, you know, it has a lot of images in it, so I don't want to misconstrue people, but I think it's like 65 pages long, the Bible, so it's like an incredibly detailed project, and we've been in it for a long time now because we had a long lead time where we were trying to figure out some things. You know, whenever you've got an IP holder, that's like a second layer or a third layer of complication. It's been going very well, but it just, you know, it's a little time consuming.
It increases the back and forth. Yeah.
Yes. So that project is finally really kicking into high gear now. So Birds of Prey closing out at a time when that's dialing up is good. I do have a little bit more Jeff stuff in the works, it looks like, and also I'm doing another mini-series thing that hasn't been announced yet. So it's not as much relief as I'd like. But again, I've said before that artists and writers in this industry, even though we have so much in common and so many relatable commonalities, we have a weirdly completely opposite thing with the money, which is artists are hopefully paid well enough that they can do one issue a month, and maybe they pick up some commissions or whatever, or they go to cons or do covers. But, you know, it's hard to do a full issue in a month at the level that that these artists work, that you're pretty tapped if you're doing an issue a month. And you probably need a break for an alternate artist to come in so that you can get ahead again and like make sure you stay ahead of the deadlines. So that means that they really can only work on one book. I mean, maybe they can pick up some other stuff here and there depending on how fast they are, but they're really constrained by that. On the other hand, writers are paid so little. If you want to live, you got to write more than one book. You got to write probably more than 2 books. So it's funny to have this like backwards problem, right? Where I'm sure artists would love to do more books, and I'd like to do some less books so that I can get some sleep and make sure that everyone's getting the attention it deserves. So, here we are.
So what do you do to decompress then? Like to take that break?
I'm sorry to say it's not great. I mean, it looks like what I'm sure a lot of people's looks like, which is mostly reading, watching movies and television.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get better at leaving my house and like, seeing my friends sometimes and like really engaging. I don't know. I honestly don't think I'll ever figure out the work-life balance thing. I think as you get older, even if you love your work the way I do, and it's probably been more rewarding in these last couple of years than it's ever been for me in this career. And that's great. And I want to appreciate that and be grateful for it. But I don't feel like I've really gotten any better at the work-life balance thing. I think as you grow older, you realize, wait, this work, even though I love it, it doesn't really love me back in the same way. And so you have to be sure to like keep cultivating your relationships, or you're going to end up like all alone with your work.
It's always good to have those people there who are willing to like be like, hey, it's time to stop.
Yeah. Hey, you don't live in a comic book. Come out here, please. So, yeah.
Touch grass, as the kids say.
Yes, they do say that.
So you've gotten to work on a lot of really iconic female characters. Have you gotten to work on your favorite?
Yes. I think Wonder Woman, certainly, and Cass Kane, Barda, Rogue, a little bit of White Queen, Emma Frost, Jessica Jones. Yeah, I mean, I've been so lucky. They talk a lot in the industry or in industries that are creative about you getting pigeonholed into a certain thing. And, anyone could look at my credits list and be like, oh, she writes lady characters. I get it. And I'm sure I am pigeonholed, and I gotta be honest, I don't really mind it. I mean, you want to be considered for Batman and Spider-Man too, and that's why you jump at writing Deadpool. I mean, I love Deadpool. I was super excited to do that. Unfortunately, the pandemic made it very difficult. But, I was excited that maybe that would help people see me as something different. But the real truth of the matter is, if a company, if like Marvel holds out Captain America and Black Widow, I'm interested in Black Widow. Like, there's nothing wrong with Steve. I like women. I'm interested in women's stories. I think I have something to say about them. And also, a lot of times they're under excavated, because they're not the big character. I mean, I encountered that really early at Marvel when I was working on A-Force. Which was something I'd inherited from G. Willow Wilson because she had some family emergency stuff. And so all of a sudden I find myself on this book. And when I was sort of settling into it in the second arc, when it was more like me building the plots rather than me working off a plot Willow had brought in, I had this great idea for She-Hulk, and I was so excited. And I was almost like, so naive. I was almost like keeping it as a secret, like my editor was going to be so excited to see this great idea that I had. And so I put it in the pitch, and she was like, yeah. She's like, this is great, but you can't do this. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I mean, She-Hulk has a solo title. They're not going to let you do this crazy thing in like a ensemble book. And like, it completely makes sense to me now with a lot more experience under my belt of like why that was the reaction. But it also taught me a really great lesson about, hey, you know who nobody cared if I did big wild things with in that book? Dazzler and Nico, like, because they didn't have a solo book. Nobody was giving them a solo book anytime soon. And so there was a lot more room to do something creative, do something cool, to really play with it and push the characters. And, you know, I think that the combination of me just liking women and wanting to write their stories, and then that thing also of like, well, she hasn't had 50 stories and 50 different reinterpretations, and so there's a lot more room to maybe do something that people haven't seen before with this character. So yeah, that is sort of how I end up there.
Do you feel that way too about Wonder Woman and her arsenal? Because she has so many characters who got kind of cast aside over the years.
Yeah, I think Wonder Woman is really tricky, and this is also just a thing with DC though, where, you know, I was more of a Marvel kid. I would always read DC, but it was I always felt more like I was visiting in the DC universe and I was home in the Marvel universe, like as a kid or as a teen, I should say. But I think there's a sort of wackiness to some of the older DC stories that's got a very different vibe than some of the Marvel stuff. And I would include in that some of the characters, some of the like Silver Age and Golden Age characters of Wonder Woman are just hilarious, like just really wacky, silly ideas that, I don't know, I really appreciate them and I like them and I think they're charming, but they also can sometimes be hard to adapt in a way that, because, you know, again, I don't want to shave all the wackiness and silliness off of things or like blunt all those edges. That's part of what makes these things fun. At the same time, if you're not taking any of those characters seriously, then you don't take Wonder Woman seriously. And so I think there's some rehab that sometimes has to be done that's maybe a little harder to make sure that Wonder Woman feels like she stands toe to toe with Batman and the Superman and, you know, the rest of the Justice League, where she doesn't feel like the girl character who's only fighting other girls who aren't that powerful or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I always hate that. I told Hayden in this season of the Witch Arc, we've got a lot of female characters, and I was like, we need some dudes in here. I was like, I don't like it when it's like, oh, the girls will fight the girls now. Like, I was like, I hate that trope. How are we falling into it? But you know, when it comes time to rehab some of those villains, like, you know, like our version of Dr. Poison, I think she's so interesting and weird and cool, and I'm excited to see what we're going to be able to do with her. But yeah, there's been a little bit of that, but I don't know, like, I think I did it, maybe it's just something that happens with Wonder Woman, because the fishmen / menfish were, I mean, they were wacky, and there was a little bit of a wackiness, even though we tried to beat it out of her, Clea was still a little bit wacky, and I think it worked. So, you know, maybe there's a better blend here that we're finding where we can still take these characters seriously, but not have to take all of the fun out of it, you know?
I think it worked for me. Like, I did a retrospective on Clea after that, just because Clea is fascinating to me, because that early version, like so many of the Golden Age characters, only appears a couple of times. So it's like you only have a little bit of that blip of that original energy. And I just find Golden Age Wonder Woman fascinating in general, because it is balancing so much. It's balancing its kind of like kink factor, its adventure factor. It's just so many different things. So it's like whenever you go that far back to pull from that version, it's going to end up being a little interesting.
Yeah. I think someone who does this a little better than I do, I mean, again, I think we're doing it very well in Wonder Woman. I think it's working, but in Absolute Wonder Woman. But I do sense this as a potential problem for me. But like someone who I'd say does it much better naturally is like Sophie Campbell doing the Supergirl book. Like, because she would say, I knew what she was doing and I was loving it. And, you know, she's so talented. It's ridiculous. Her artwork is like just eye-watering. She would send me all these really wacky, crazy Supergirl things. And I would just be laughing and laughing. Like, we were in Discord. I'm like, what? She did not. And I'm like, well, you can't use that. And Sophie's like, are you crazy? Of course I'm using that. And I just think Sophie has a really great perspective on it. You know, like a thing that I want to run from, she's like, nah, lean all the way into that. I love that spirit. I try to bring that more to my work and when I can.
So what's your favorite era of Wonder Woman then?
It's hard for me to pin down era. I mean, I guess it's whatever you want to call the modern era, because Greg Rucka probably has, I don't know if it's my favorite Diana because it was Gale that made me fall in love with Diana. Like, I had always liked Diana and respected her, but it wasn't until Gale's Diana that was a little bit funnier and a little bit more relatable, a little bit more human to me, that I really fell in love with her. But a weird thing that happened was that after that happened, then when I would go back and read Greg Rucka's plots that I love so much, like Eyes of the Gorgon and like things like that, and the Hikatia, of course, is incredible. When I would read that after I had fallen more in love, I loved those stories even more. So I had liked them. I thought they were great. But then when I went back and reread them after reading Gale's, I was just so much more in love with Diana that it had this really positive effect on the whole reading experience. I think some of the creativity from some of the Silver Age stuff and some of the pushes forward there are incredible. But I do sort of really come back to Greg and Gale as sort of the North Star of sort of the kind of same stuff I was interested in and the ideas that I wanted to push on. But the number one influence for Absolute Wonder Woman by far is Historia. I just think if you read that, what they did there, it can't be done better than that. And I think it's foolish to try. And so, I said to Chris, I was like, I'm just going to use this as sort of the light blueprint. It can't be our canon because we're a different world, but this could be the blueprint. This could be the framework for it, because I can't go in and do this better than Kelly Sue and her incredible artists did this. The creativity, the care, the attention to the things that matter to a Wonder Woman comic book. I mean, because Diana is just like sort of an idea in those volumes, and highlighting the Amazons in such a way and showing how important they are to the DC universe and to who Diana becomes. I mean, I guess that's why I got so mad. There were some people speculating when we saw Themyscira in issue 12. There were a bunch of people speculating online about, I bet the Amazons will be evil. And I was like, that's the last thing I would do.
Not this time.
I can't even tell you how against that I am. I put all the clues there. I don't know how anyone would think that was going to be a twist if you're actually reading the book. I mean, I had Diana literally say it. I think it's a caption, not a dialogue balloon, but where she talks about seeing IO, like that she had always believed she came from these honorable people, but like that was a faith-based guess. She didn't know anything about them. She just believed it. And so seeing IO in this maze prison for decades, when she probably could have gotten out and just escaped on her own and left all those people to die, and Diana's like, this is an Amazon. And it's why when she looks at Clea, she goes, that's not a fucking Amazon. Like, the Amazons are heroic heroes. They made the greatest hero in the world. Like, how could you think I would make them evil? I just felt like it was so the antithesis of anything I would ever want to do, that it offended me a little bit that people thought that. Like, I know everyone's desperate for a twist, but like, listen, it's not on my watch. Amazons. I do think the Amazons are complicated. Their very existence in some ways makes Diana seem less special in a way, which can be hard in comics. I don't have any problem with that as like how she works and functions in DC, but I just think as a book, it's the same way. People have been asking me about Donna Troy a lot. Will she be showing up in the book? And I'd love to have her eventually in it if we can get a long enough run. But I do think there are a lot of strikes against someone specifically like Donna appearing. When you've got a limited number of characters, you're going to have the chance to Absolute. And you've already got her sister that looks just like her, who has a lot of the same mythology and weapons and touchstones. Like, why would that be the character you would go to next? Like, I feel like Donna would need, in order to show up, Donna would need such a change to make sense for her to also appear early in these Absolute stories, that I don't know that she would feel like Donna anymore. And what's the point of that? We want Donna, don't we? Like, we don't want some monstrous not Donna. So I don't know. I think that the Amazon, Not on my watch, man. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what else I can say. The idea that I guess if you haven't listened to any interviews or read any interviews, and you don't know that Historia is such a major tent pole for how I decided to build this, maybe that's how you would get there. But I don't know. I still put it right on the page, man. I didn't want any confusion about this issue. I wasn't trying to play around.
I think some people just want evil Amazons. They're just like that.
Well, that's a whole different conversation, and I agree with you, but let's not go there.
Speaking of some of like the villains and stuff, like how did you land on people like Veronica Cale and Zatanna? Or like we'll see where Zatanna goes, but like bringing those kind of characters in.
So Cale, I think, is just an obvious, really great choice. I mean, that, again, I've said how much I like Greg Rucka's plots and his characters. I'm very interested. Ferdinand is also one of his. I love Ferdinand. So, you'll see a lot of Greg's stuff popping up, I'm sure. Cale just makes a lot of sense. I don't like to say that she can be a Lex Luthor because it feels, you shouldn't just lump these characters together. But I do think that that's a good touch point for people who want to understand the kind of dynamics you're going for. Like Lex, Cale is not powered, or maybe not powered. We don't think she's powered. We don't know for sure, but she doesn't present as powered. But she's accrued an incredible amount of power in the world, and is now using it in terrible, terrible ways. And that's a fantastic foil for Diana, especially a Diana who wants to help everyone, wants to redeem and transform everyone. So to have a woman be doing this, I think Diana finds like even more egregious, not that Diana doesn't think women can be evil, but it's just upsetting. You're like, listen, what are you doing to our reputation out here? You're a fucking monster. And I grew up in the underworld with monsters, so I'm telling you, I know. She just seemed like a great center point for all of that to sort of spin around. Diana's got a lot of villains that easily could be slotted into containment cells and be horrible experiments gone wrong, from Giganta to Dr. Poison, etc. Right? So there was just a lot of nice overlapping stuff. But again, that's the benefit, right? Is that we have just decades of cool shit we can draw from and make our own. And that's why it's like one of the best gigs to have, is if you can get a chance to rebuild one of these characters in a new universe like this, especially if it's going to be a huge thing like this that's all tied together, but where the books are allowed to sort of have their own identity. Like, it's just powerful stuff. I've talked about this a lot, so I'll keep it short, but I almost quit the book before, and I was days away from having to call Scott and be like, you got to give it to someone else. I can't do it. I'm sorry I've burned up so much of your runway, but I can't figure it out. And that it was like within that conflict and me trying to figure it out that I was like, what about a witch Wonder Woman raised by Circe? That's how she becomes a witch, but she's raised by an enemy. She shouldn't have Themyscira. So I was like, witch Wonder Woman raised by Circe in hell. And I was like, I wrote that sentence down in my book, and I was like, okay, I can write that for 1,000 issues. I got it. And then that was it. So once I had that, it became the best job in the world, because I knew I had all these masters' shoulders that I could stand on and use all their stuff to make cool new shit with it. And it's really the best job in the world.
Is it still getting to stay fairly separate, or are some of the Absolut things starting to kind of come together a bit more?
Well, I don't know what the exact plan is, but I mean, I think once you put two of them on the page together, as we are in December with Batman and Wonder Woman, I think you are sort of starting the clock, right? Like we can only delay it so long once these guys have started meeting. I think there is a lot of cohesion and agreement and a unity on what this world is and sort of the ultimate hoops we're sort of driving toward. But I think DC and Scott and everyone, all the creators on all the books, have been really good about being allowed to cook within their own thing and do their own thing. But I think the further along you get, the more you're going to see some of those themes come out that do link the books, we're all talking about similar things because all our characters are existing in a world that has this dark thread running through it that's messing everything up. So I think the longer they go, the more you're going to see those kind of things individually in the books. And then, of course, we're going to see some more legitimate crossovers. I mean, since the villains have claimed the words Justice League, what will we be when we get there? Like, I think there's a lot of really fun questions there. So
are you looking forward to that kind of coming together, or do you kind of like having your own space to play in?
I 100% like my own space to play in, but I did reach very greedily when we were talking about it. I was like, I think it should be Batman and Batman and Wonder Woman. I was like, I didn't do this intentionally, but of those three characters, she's the only one that is looking to build connections and coalitions, and we're going to be stronger together. You know, I mean, she's borderline trying to create her own little Amazons in the Hieron. So, you know, like working together. So I think she just, you know, she's someone who's been separated and isolated her whole life and only had one point of contact other than all making friends with all these little demons. So she's just naturally a builder. And in that way, it makes sense for her to reach out to these other characters and connect them. I would also say, just from a selfish standpoint, I mean, it's Diana, so it's even when it's selfish, it's not entirely selfish. Hi, you're taking up the whole thing. Can you move over? Sorry, my cat is like trying to push the laptop off the table.
No, yeah. I had to put mine out because he's so loud. So
yeah, we have to share, man. Anyway, Diana, again, selfishly, but it's still not selfish because it's Diana. But like, you know, she knows 1 month every year she's going to disappear from Earth. So it makes sense for her to want to build allies and relationships. Like, what happens to her city when she's gone for a month and she can't affect any change? So like, she sees a much broader picture. And I think that that's only natural. She's grown up. I mean, whether they're all full of bullshit or not, and they're not, she's grown up with goddesses who can see the future, you know, and a mom who can look in a scrying pool sometimes and have visions of the future. She's got an eye on a very long tail in a way that Batman and Superman don't. She's also been like literally trained and born and bred for this moment. So for her to not be the leader is almost weird. So I greedily reached for Batman and then instantly regretted it and started making jokes about how Jason Aaron had tricked me into wanting it. But I just think I regretted it in the sense that it's really hard. It was a lot of pressure on it. This first meeting between these characters to make sure to build a story that makes sense for what you're doing, but also give the fans the things you know they want so desperately and that you want to give for them, you know? I mean, when I was in it, I was really regretting it because I was very worried. I was like, oh my God, there's going to be so many eyes on this. But I think what we came up with is incredible. And of course, Hayden, man, there's the way that issue starts. It's a 1-page opening with Kale, and she's talking to someone on the phone, and you like see her house, which is like my dream house. Hayden, how dare you give my dream house to a monster? And then there's a double-page spread that's the view of Gotham, and it's incredible. But then there's this thing there's no really words to describe how Hayden did this. But it's just cool, man. The way Hayden thinks about panel layouts, and I will take a tiny amount of credit, which is that when he turned in the layout for that double page spread, I was like, listen, it's spectacular. It's going to be incredible. I was like, but I do feel like we're sort of missing, because it's a big image and then it's like a couple, two or three other panels like going. I scripted it, quote unquote, as like running below it, right? The panels run below it. But because Hayden is Hayden, nothing is just like, oh, I'm just going to put some rectangle panels at the bottom. No, I'm not doing that. So they did this incredible thing where how the panels lay on the page. But I was worried that even though I loved the structure of it, I was like, are we losing that feeling of it being down below? Because this view, like, you know, Batman is so in the tops of the skyscrapers, but then he's also like down in the streets. And like, I wanted to feel that. And so Hayden made this tweak that, I mean, I can't even really explain it. I hope people will get it when they see it, because I just thought it was a spectacular bit of storytelling. And that's on page 2 and 3 of the issue. So when you see that stuff start to come in, you're like, oh, I am glad we reached for Batman, because this is going to be amazing. I'm glad I forgot to be afraid for a second.
It's been really fun seeing the different art styles be allowed to, you know, come out. I know some people enjoy a more house-based style, but I think it's fun to be able to see all of the different ways that you can play with the medium and the different ways that you can tell stories and bring in some of those more alternatively inspired styles, be it from like European influence, manga influence, whatever it is.
Yeah, you are preaching to the choir there. I think it's super great. And I think, especially with when you've got a somewhat small line that's going to be like, oh, we're starting with 3 books and then it'll grow to 6. That would be easier to apply a house style to it, to be like, oh, well, this is all the same universe, let's have these books all look the same. It would not even be a crazy idea. I am so glad they went the other way. I mean, how else do you get, like, I mean, I feel like Hayden's Wonder Woman is like the closest we'll ever get to like Mobius Wonder Woman, you know? And it's like, how cool is that to get that? And then, but it looks completely different than like what Nick is doing on Batman. And they're equally interesting in just totally different ways. I love it. I love it. And I love that people have fully embraced Hayden's work in such a way. I mean, you every once in a while get people you hear going, oh, I don't really like the style, it's too ugly, or it's not flash enough, or it's not shiny enough, or whatever. And I'm like, man, you do not know what you are talking about. These are comics, like fully immersed in the storytelling, in the best way to present the information to you. I mean, do I hear your cat now?
Yep.
Sounds familiar.
And it's been really fun as a reader, and just as someone who also videos talking about the various comic book outings, to just kind of be immersed in something as it is ongoing, because comics is such a, you know, long-lived medium that's really interesting to be in the thick of something new. Like, do you feel that way too?
Yes, this is the first time I've really had this experience like this, and it's been very cool. I mean, so much so that I'm saying it sort of hurt my experience on Birds of Prey. Not, you know, like Birds of Prey had been going for a year before, and we'd already long ago lost Leo and sort of changed what we were doing a little bit when Absolute Wonder Woman came out. I mean, I think, 14 was coming out around the time that Absolute, and that was when Jordy had left the book because she moved to Wonder Woman. So like, even back then, I mean, I didn't know Birds was as frustrating for me until Wonder Woman happened. And I do have a little bit of fear now, because you can't expect everything to be Wonder Woman. I mean, not only is she Wonder Woman, but, you know, Scott has put together just an incredible line, and DC has just been so supportive of supporting those creators' individual visions and how it all comes together. It's been a truly incredible experience. And like, they're not all going to be like that, Kelly. So are you going to be sad about all your books now that they don't get, like, it's the first time. Here's a great example of what it has felt like to be on Wonder Woman. There would be times before, remember when we talked before about how I look at what people are saying a little too much? So sometimes you'd see someone about whatever book, even Captain Marvel, like Birds of Prey, whatever, I'd see someone say something wrong about the book. And especially in this world of complete disinformation and misinformation and nothing feels real, my instinct is always to correct that. And I resist that as much as I can, because I just want to be like, no, it's in this, you know, or whatever. And Absolute Wonder Woman is the first time I've experienced it where the fan base self-corrects. Where I don't have to worry about going in and saying, no, that's not what happened. That's in this issue and this happened. Some fan will come in and tell them for me. That's the first time that's happened. So like, of all the cool shit that's happened with Absolute Wonder Woman, of all the fan mail I've gotten and all of it, that is the thing that stuck out to me the most as like a bellwether of how it's different. And weirdly, it's not the same with Jeff, but it is similar. And again, I think it's a level of popularity. There are just so many people reading it that they're going to see it and let people know, not because they're trying to be dicks, but just because they're also a fan and they want to show
they're really excited.
Yeah, they're excited and they want to show that they know what they're talking about. And I just, honestly, even with other big successes, and I have had them, you know, some great things have happened, but I've never seen that before for my work. And it's honestly really, it's sort of freeing, because you can stop worrying about that so much. You can be like, okay, I just know people are reading this book and they're telling their friends about it. And it almost feels like a snowball effect where you just have to worry about that less, because you know, it's these books get canceled all the time. So you worry about that stuff all the time. And this time I'm like, I go on, you know, Blue Sky or whatever, and I see someone going, why is everyone I know telling me to read Wonder Woman, Absolute Wonder Woman? And you're like, yes, that's what I want to hear. Like, some random person who doesn't even read comic books is being inundated by people they know to be like, read this book. Like, that's what you want. That feels like, that to me feels a little bit like what I imagined it would feel like when Saga came out, you know, because Saga was a book that a trade that I would just buy for people who I weren't into comics, but who I thought might like it, including my brother, who doesn't really read comics. One of my brothers doesn't really read comics, and I gave him Saga, and he was like, "This was really good," and I was like, "Yeah, right." Like, so it was fun. I think another one I'd say with that was like The Walking Dead, at the height of The Walking Dead, at the comic, not the show. But like, you know, my sister-in-law doesn't read comics or care about comics, and she fucking loved The Walking Dead comics. She got so into it. So sometimes things just, I don't know, they just take off in an interesting way. And this is my first time being inside of that, and it's nice.
Well, I hope that it definitely continues, and I will definitely be also saying that people should check it out.
Thank you. I appreciate your service.
And I want to say thank you for taking some time to discuss it with us.
You got it. I had a great time.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much to everyone who made it to the end. Thanks so much to Kelly for stopping by. Please check out Absolute Wonder Woman, comics in general, do all the YouTube things. There will be more videos coming soon, and I will see you there. Bye-bye.